This video is sponsored by Skillshare. I'm going to show you how to take pallets, angle iron, and cut them up, put them together, and create this. Let's get started by cutting this into smaller parts. In order to see the mark I'll be making, I place tape on the angle iron. Now I measure and mark a line at 19 inches. Now use a file to clean up the cut ends. And you'll need 4 of these, so repeat the same process. I know some of you wanted to see some pallet projects, and with that said, I'll incorporate that in this. I dug through my pallet stash, and here are some of the ones I found. I'll take these over to the table saw and cut them down to size. I'll first run these through the table saw and create a straight edge so I can reference off of that. I started off cutting these wide at first, and then I trimmed them down based on what I felt the visual would look like afterwards. One of the drawbacks to working with pallets is how rough they are. If you have a thickness planer, you can run these through and clean them up. Since this is a smaller project, I'll use a sander to clean these up. It's best to use sandpaper with a lower grit, such as 60, 80, or even 100, and work your way up. I ended up making 2 stacks, one 11-inch long and one 10-inch long. Now I use these to make 4 frames. The frames will be constructed from 2 of the long strips and 2 of the short strips. Apply wood glue to the joint and clamp them. Let them sit for about an hour and remove the clamps. At this point, the wood glue is not fully cured, but it's strong enough to work with. As I do a test fit, you'll see the sharp corners on the frames. Do not allow the frame to sit within the angle iron. I want this to sit firmly and tight as possible, so I need to round over the corners. You can round over the corners using a rasp and sand it down to clean it up. You can also use a sander with a lower grit sandpaper to round the corners as well. But the easiest and fastest way is to use a router with a round over bit. At this point, I'll need to connect 2 of the frames together. From the pallets, I cut down some smaller strips, round over the corners on one of them, and glue the parts together. I then cut the parts down to smaller pieces, which allowed me to glue the frames together and also set the spacing between the frame. Now you can clamp this frame together or place weight on top of it and repeat this again for the other frame. The angle iron has a coat on them, so I need to sand this down before I apply paint to them. I clean these up using 100 grit sandpaper and then follow that up with 120 grit. Once the parts are sanded down, I'll use acetone to clean them up. Now I'm making progress. The next step is to place tape on the angle iron and mark the locations for the bolts. Now you can drill the holes for the bolts. First, I'll use a punch tool to set a point. Then you can use a smaller bit to start the hole. This way the larger bit doesn't walk off. These bits are fairly new, so I won't have that issue. But I will say these are the best bits I've used to drill steel. I went to the store, wandered the aisles until I found something I was confident with, and that ended up being a new construction electrical ceiling box. To make this work, I modified it to fit within the frame I have. And by modifying it, I mean cutting it down and also trimming the tabs. I actually like the raw metal look on the angle iron, but for this project, I'll be painting them. I made this parts holder a while ago for painting small pieces, and turns out it's good enough for this project. Thankfully, I didn't have to modify it or make it bigger. All the materials I used in the video, I usually link them in the video description unless I cannot find them. The spray paint I'm using has both spray paint and primer built in one. I sprayed 2 coats and still had plenty left over in the can, so one is all you need. This is a dark walnut color, and it also has a satin finish. This is a fast drying paint, but I still let it sit overnight. Now I didn't want to see contrast on this project, so I went dark on the metal and light on the wood. For the wood, I'll be using a wipe-on Danish oil, just 1 coat. As I was applying Danish oil, I got a bit clumsy and spilled it. I couldn't let this all go to waste or soaked up by the paper, so I had to move pretty fast to get it on the frame. While I'm cleaning up my mess, let me take this time to tell you about today's sponsor. I know there's a lot of people out there trying to figure out what's next for them. Maybe you're no longer in school, or you're tired of your day job, or you just want to pick up a new skills. If this is you, this is where I want to tell you about Skillshare. It's an online learning community with thousands of inspiring classes for creativity and curious people looking to explore new skills and develop existing interests and get lost in creativity. I would consider myself a person that have a lot of skills. However, I didn't learn them overnight. In fact, I learned them the hard way. You know, going out researching, pulling information from different directions. With Skillshare, it's already organized for you. Just become a sponge and soak in the information. As a user of Skillshare, I use the platform to enhance what I already know from various fields such as filmmaking, photography, and productivity. I've watched this course from Christopher, who is also a YouTuber, to get a better idea of his approach. I'm always digging for tips and tricks because I find those helpful. There are so many other categories on here, you just have to pick the one that interests you the most. The first 1,000 people to use the link in my video description will get a free trial of Skillshare Premium membership. And after that, it's only around $10 a month. You can learn what you went there for or pick up new things you didn't think about. So let's dial it back in to finish up this light. Now I'll install the electrical box within the frame and tighten it down. One thing I did before painting the electrical box was to adjust it so that it sat centered within the frame. I installed these with 8 screws from the inside, 4 per side. Now I need to transfer the holes from the angle iron to the frame. To make this less stressful, you may want to drill these holes before applying a finish. However, if you're careful, it shouldn't matter when you drill them. You'll still want to take the same exact step I took, which is adding a backer board on the inside of the frame so when you drill through, you don't blow the wood out. Now I do have the angle iron painted already. It does make a difference at this stage because I don't want to clamp the angle iron to the frames. So what I did was drill a hole, place the bolt, then drill the other holes. This way I didn't have to worry about the angle iron shifting as I'm drilling. The nuts and bolts I'm using here are actually plastic, and the good thing is they don't add much weight. I have a total of 16 holes to drill, so a lot of repetition here. This light will be hanging by chain, so I need to add an anchor point at the top. I was attempting to use self-tapping screws, but since the metal was so thick, I didn't want to add too much vibration to the light, so I drilled a pilot hole first. Now I can drive in the self-tapping screws. I'll drive these in for now, paint another set, and drive them in after. I remove one of the knockout, add the grommet, and install the accessory kit. Now it's a matter of adding the chain and weaving the power cord through it. I'll leave it long for now and shorten the links later. The next step is to ground the plate to your electrical ceiling box, connect the black and white conductor to your existing wire, mount it, and adjust the links to your liking. And that is it for this one. If you're new here, be sure to subscribe to the channel. If you enjoyed the video, be sure to smash a thumbs up, and I will catch you in the next one.